Welcome whatsoever, more or less. My name is Jason, and today I've got a thought for you on the 14th Amendment, since that case is getting covered a lot right now regarding birthright citizenship. I have a thing I made about a year ago. It's called 14 Points to Consider about the 14th Amendment's constitutionality, or the 14th Amendment, the Constitution. The text of it, what have you. So here it is. Number one. And I'll go ahead and try to add some additional details that I didn't add at that point. So, because the study continues to go on. Again, I continue to focus mostly on the Constitution itself, the words of the founders, the words of the prophets, and occasionally review Supreme Court cases. Okay, 14 points to consider about the 14th Amendment. Okay, dishonesty. First off, the Constitution had no allowance whatsoever to force a state to remain in the Union. Okay. Secession is not synonymous with rebellion, for example. Okay, there is no there's no permanent union. That was in the Articles of Confederation, but the Articles of Confederation were considered null and void. Many states at the time they ratified the Constitution reserved the right to reclaim the delegated powers. The 10th Amendment itself clarifies those are delegated powers. Okay, the power is not delegated to the federal government, nor prohibited to the states or reserved to the states or the people respectively, right? Something to that effect is what it says in the 10th Amendment. So they were very clear, we're only delegating this power to you, and we reserve the right to reclaim it. Georgia, before the 11th Amendment, said, hey, we're a sovereign nation, we're a sovereign state. You're trying to sue us in front of the Supreme Court. Even though that was the kind of case that was allowed in Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1, they're like, no. You don't have the right to sue us in federal court. And so the 11th Amendment was passed afterwards. The states retained their sovereignty. It was a more perfect union. It was not a nation that was formed. Okay, so first off, secession was not prohibited to the states, nor the power to force the union to be permanent reserved to the federal government or delegated to the federal government. So that's number one, dishonesty. Two, Civil War was... So, and the Civil War has to be addressed because the 14th Amendment is part of the Reconstruction Amendments, by the way. So this is incredibly relevant of whether or not even the 14th Amendment is valid. Okay, the Civil War was not fought for common defense as the Constitution requires. And then some people might be saying, so, but you've defended the Iran conflict. Yes, I have, but it's more like the Barbary Pirates at that point, right? America, our functionality overseas has been constantly impeded for the past 47 years by the number one state sponsor of terror. I can't believe the number of stories I keep hearing about what Iran has done to us. Why would we continue putting up with them? They weren't negotiating, what have you. So that is a common defense thing, even though they're way over there. It's like saying, they're so far away they can't do anything to us. Yes, nowadays they can, right? So this is kind of a big deal. But the Civil War, there was no threat from South Carolina. There was no threat from these different states saying, hey, we're going to come after the northern states. We're going to mess you guys up. So it doesn't fit a proper constitutional purpose. Okay, secession, number three. Secession had a very legitimate precedent in American history. So again, 14th Amendment is part of the Reconstruction Amendments. We have to address whether or not what led up to the Reconstruction in the first place is even legitimate. The Declaration of Independence, what's that? It's a secession document. So it's just truth. I'm just being honest, you guys. And you should know this. You should know this. Everybody should know this. If you haven't reconciled this, because you went through the American education system where they indoctrinate you a certain way. Okay. 4, ratified under duress isn't consistent with Article 5, which is what happened. Okay. So basically, let's see here. Do I cover this later on? But I'm going to make sure I got this right. Okay. So look. Yeah, in what is it, Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution. Let me see if I got this up right now. I don't have it up right now. Okay. But anyhow, I believe it's Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution says Congress shall have the power to judge the qualifications. Judge the qualifications of its members, right? Now let's go ahead and look at an important case that came up here. So the case that came up, so here I am, I'm quoting Supreme Court cases for you guys, for those of you that love it. In Powell versus McCormick, the only qualifications that Congress is qualified to judge are those which the Constitution establishes, which have to do with your age, your citizenship, and your residency. Okay? And Adam Clayton Powell ran for re-election, and the members of Congress felt like he hadn't been honest enough in his financial dealings, so they wanted to not allow him to be seated. In an 8-1 Supreme Court decision, they said that's not one of the qualifications for being a member of Congress. There's only 3 types of qualifications: age, citizenship, and residency. Okay, yet what they did during the 14th Amendment, during the Reconstruction era, they refused to seat the representatives of the southern states unless they agreed to ratify the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, or in other words, the Reconstruction Amendments. So, in order to go along to actually get the representation again in Congress, they agreed to the ratification of the Reconstruction Amendments. It's called forced consent. We have another word for that when it's, a guy and a girl going out, Forced consent is not acceptable. That is the history of the 14th Amendment, no matter how much you like the text of it, okay? Just saying, that's the history of it. It's the reality of it, okay? As much as think about the Lamanite women who went along with the priests of King Noah, and then after the key priests of King Noah stole them, they fell in love with the priests of King Noah, and so defended their husbands in front, that they were forced to marry in front of their fathers, right? It happens sometimes. For some reason, we've fallen in love with this thing that we were forced to accept. I don't know why, okay? All right, number 5. Every clause in the amendment, in the 14th Amendment, dealt with the aftermath of the Civil War. Read the whole thing. The whole function of the big picture of the 14th Amendment is the aftermath of the Civil War. It's not intended to create permanent policy, okay? It just isn't, okay? Subject to the jurisdiction, and I haven't read it in a while. I read the Constitution on a regular basis. Probably last time I read the 14th Amendment was a few months ago. So, subject to the jurisdiction had also been described as not subject to any foreign power. So there was a bill passed through Congress right around the same time, like a year before or something, where it says all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power. I believe that bill was called the Civil Rights Act of 1869 or something like that. Anyhow, you have to remember, historically, the word subject is what they used for us. We were subject to the crown. We were subject to this, subject to that. Then we began to say the word citizens. Historically, the word subject means citizen, okay? It's just you have less rights as a subject, but it's besides the point. So if you're a French person and you come here to America and then you have a baby here, that baby has really French citizenship, unless you absolutely intended to no longer be a subject of France and you wanted to legally come to America, right? Okay. So look at the I think it's called the Civil Rights Act of 1869 or something like that, 1867. Not subject to any foreign power. I heard just now they were arguing that in the Supreme Court, saying, well, that means if they're subject to a foreign power, that means they're only here diplomatically. I disagree, because historically the word subject was interchangeable with the word citizen. Citizen was just considered a nicer word for more free people. Okay. 7. Historically, born was more commonly used as past tense of to bear. Right? So, tense-wise, all persons born, that's past tense, right? You could say there's some wiggle room in that one, but it's a point worth making. 8. Are citizens, when you read it, what it says, typically when something's meant to be an ongoing thing in the Constitution, that's a permanent part of the way the United States operates, it says, shall be, shall do, shall this, shall that. Instead, when it says all persons born in the United States and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens, the verb used there is are, A-R-E. Okay? So that's not permanent type legal language, if you ask me. Okay? 9. The 14th Amendment congressional debates were about freed slaves. I haven't read through them all, but I've heard some coverage of it. That seems to be the case. 10. Indian tribes didn't receive citizenship until the 1920s, not even after Wong Kim Ark, which everybody tries to see Wong Kim Ark as redefining the Constitution permanently, right? Which, anyhow, they didn't, when they did it, they just dealt with Wong Kim Ark, right? But now we're saying somebody comes here into the country illegally, right? Has a baby here, or they want to do birth tourism, I guess is what they call it, right? Same thing, right? All right, 11. Judicial review isn't a power reserved to the federal government or prohibited to the states and cannot redefine original intent. Okay? That's just the facts. When you read Article 3, it defines powers. right? It defines powers. And then the 10th Amendment, the language of it is cut and dry. Power is not delegated by this Constitution to the federal government, nor prohibited to the states or reserved to the states or to the people, respectively. And that's what, look up the Kentucky resolutions. Those are the strongest statement on that. I think Jefferson's the most important president. I plan on making a video about that real soon here. The accusations of hypocrisy are overwhelmingly ridiculous. Not completely, but all of us are hypocrites to a certain degree, as one of my bishops once told me. So he just is. I'll make my case for it. Okay. So let me see here. I've got a quote from Dallin H. Oaks. In my opinion, this is from Dallin H. Oaks in his Fundamentals of Our Constitution. I think this is the right spot. Let me see here. In my opinion, the judicial lawmaking that has been legitimately criticized as judicial activism concerns the interpretation of state and federal constitutions. This kind of judicial action is not reversible by the popularly elected lawmakers and cannot even be changed by the sovereign people except in those unusual circumstances in which a constitutional amendment is feasible. Okay. If such judicial action sets aside laws enacted or approved by the direct vote of the people, it offends two fundamentals: separation of powers and popular sovereignty. Okay? That's from Dallin H. Oaks, our current prophet. Okay? It's not a power that's supposed to exist to redefine the Constitution. When you read Article 6, Clause 2, it's the Constitution, the laws, and the treaties. And then Article 6, Clause 3 follows immediately after, which is the oath of office. So it's everybody's duty to read the Constitution, not the Supreme Court's to tell us what it is. Okay, then point 12 here. The current problem is an invasion and alien enemies problem. There is a constitutional obligation to repel it. Period. They wouldn't have misunderstood this at all historically. Okay, they understood the concept of what's it called? Population subversion that's not the word I'm looking for. Demographic subversion is what they call it nowadays. I don't think our founders called it that, but they knew what they were dealing with. Okay, I think dual citizenship, point 13. As somebody who was born here in the United States without dual citizenship, who's just legitimately born here, why is it that I didn't get dual citizenship? Why aren't I granted, citizenship to two different countries at the same time? That's not cool. Why do you get it and I don't get it? What makes you so special, right? I think that people need to pick, right? That's all there is to it. I think that it can not be obvious why we see that as unfair, period. All right? And then, anyhow, this is just me covering it real quick, by the way, guys. Okay, one more. 14th point on the 14th Amendment. Using a square peg for a round hole violates the consent of the governed. Okay? My point in saying that this is a square peg is the 14th Amendment was written to deal with the aftermath, the reconstruction, the aftermath of the Civil War. It's for this, but they're trying to use it for this. They're trying to use it to figure out what to do about the illegal immigration problem and the babies that are born here. This is a round hole. This is a square peg. This is the Civil War, post-Civil War peg, and they're trying to cram it into the illegal immigration problem. It doesn't work. And we didn't want anything like that. The people didn't want anything like that. The court just came along and said, oh, look at the 14th Amendment. We can reapply it this way. It's inappropriate. It's the epitome of inappropriate. It's the epitome of unconstitutional. So we'll see if the courts get it right today. But once again, I respect Dallin H. Oaks. He seems to respect judicial review when it's done with the absolute most seriousness. And I think he's one of the greatest commentators on the Constitution. But he's basically saying, it's, as a general rule, it's not. He says, in divinely inspired Constitution, defending our divinely inspired Constitution, we don't find inspiration in all Supreme Court decisions interpreting the Constitution. Okay? That's the truth. All right. So, all right. Thanks for listening, you guys. We'll see you.